Imagine for a second that you are reading a classic novel.
Okay.
Like, it's that one book you've had on your shelf for years. You've read it maybe a dozen times.
We all have one of those, yeah.
Right. You know all the plot twists. You know how it ends. You know, like the deep lore of the universe.
Yeah.
But then on your 13th read, you notice a detail you have somehow completely overlooked every single
I
time.
love moments like that.
It's the best. You realize that the main character, the hero who ultimately saves the day in the final act, hasn't just miraculously appeared at the end of the story. They have actually been hidden in the background of every single chapter, literally from the very first page.
Wow.
Yeah. You realize they were, I don't know, the unnamed stranger sitting in the corner of the tavern in chapter 1.
Right.
They were the shadow in the alleyway in chapter 3. They were the mysterious messenger who dropped off the letter in chapter 5. And suddenly the entire book just completely shifts in your hands.
Because you aren't just reading a new story anymore.
Exactly. You are looking at the old story with entirely new eyes.
It is, it's the ultimate paradigm shift for a reader. It completely rewrites your relationship with the text.
It really does.
Because in that exact moment, you realize the author was operating on a level of structural genius that you hadn't fully appreciated.
Yeah, you thought it was just simple.
Right. You thought you were tracking a simple linear progression, just a timeline moving from point A to point B. But you were actually watching a masterful, deliberate, and highly coordinated unveiling.
Unveiling. I like that word for this. And that feeling, that absolute mind-bending realization of, wait, they were there the whole time. That is the foundation of our deep dive today.
It really is.
We are looking at a massive stack of theological research, scriptural analyses, historical texts, all to construct this grand unified portrait of Jesus Christ.
And the mission today is to look far beyond just the New Testament.
Exactly. We are examining a harmonized, multi-perspective view of his work across the entire span of the Bible.
Which is so needed because, we often fall into this trap of compartmentalization when we look at historical or religious texts.
Oh, totally.
It is very common to think of the Old Testament as just the prologue, right?
Yeah, just a dense collection of ancient laws and kings and, prophets yelling about things.
Exactly. And then people view the New Testament as the main event where Jesus finally steps out from behind the curtain and onto the stage.
Right.
But the core premise we are exploring today shatters that linear timeline completely. The argument presented across all these documents is that Jesus is not a character who is merely introduced in the New Testament.
He is unveiled there.
Yes, unveiled. The texts make this really compelling case that he has been active, present, and deliberately shaping the narrative from before the first words of Genesis were ever spoken.
Okay, see, I really want to dig into that specific idea, that before Genesis concept, because frankly, it breaks my brain a little bit.
It's heavy, yeah.
Right, because if we want to track him through human history, we actually can't start with human history.
No, you can't.
We have to travel back before the physical universe. What some of these writers and our sources call the high wall of the physical realm was ever even constructed.
Right.
But how do we even begin to conceptualize that? I mean, humanly speaking.
Well, the best way to approach it is to actually use the New Testament as a lens to look backward into the shadows of the Old Testament.
Okay, give me an example.
So if you open the Gospel of John, chapter 1, the very first verses establish this cosmic baseline immediately.
The in the beginning part.
Exactly. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that has been made.
That is just so absolute.
It is. And we see this echoed really heavily in Paul's letter to the Colossians, specifically chapter 1, verses 15 through 17. The text states that he is before all things, and by him all things consist.
By him all things consist.
Right. And Hebrews chapter 1 describes him as the one by whom God made the worlds. So the central theological claim here is that the eternal Son did not have his beginning in a manger in Bethlehem.
Which is, it's so easy to default to that, right?
Oh, freak that.
We have the nativity scenes, we have the carols, we have the whole cultural focus on the baby in the manger. It feels like the starting line of the story for most of us.
It does.
But you're saying the Old Testament is actually dropping hints about this eternal, pre-existent nature long before a manger was ever even in the picture.
Absolutely. The hints are just deeply embedded in the text.
Like where?
Well, take the prophet Micah, for example.
Yeah.
In Micah chapter 5, verse 2, there is this really famous prophecy about the ruler of Israel coming from Bethlehem.
Oh, right. They quote that around Christmas all the time.
Exactly. But if you look closely at the language, it specifically states that his origins are from of old, from everlasting.
Oh, wow, from everlasting.
Yeah. Or consider Psalm 110, where King David is writing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he addresses the coming Messiah as my Lord.
Okay, wait, let's unpack that.
So it presents a fascinating paradox that Jesus himself actually points out later on. How can David's descendant also be David's Lord unless he pre-existed David?
Oh, that's wild. It's like a time travel riddle.
It really is. And the Septuagint, which is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, it spans on Psalm 110.3 with this incredibly poetic and profound phrase. It says, "Before the morning star, I have begotten you."
Before the morning star. That is just beautiful, but also, incredibly vast.
Very vast.
There's another passage that always confuses me a bit when we talk about this eternal existence, and that's Proverbs chapter 8.
Ah, yes.
It talks a lot about wisdom, but it talks about wisdom as if it's an actual person, not just a concept.
Yes, exactly. Proverbs 8, specifically verses 22 through 31. This is a text where wisdom is personified. And the early church fathers widely understood this passage as foreshadowing the eternal Son.
Really, what does it say?
The text reads, "The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his way. Before his works of old, I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily his delight."
A master workman.
Right. It is describing a distinct entity existing with God before the creation of the earth, actively rejoicing in the architectural layout of the cosmos.
That is fascinating. But I want to go back to the Gospel of John for a second, because that word he uses, John calls him the Word.
Yes.
And I know from our research that the original Greek term there is logos.
Correct.
But what does that actually mean? I mean, why use the concept of a word to describe a person who created the universe? It seems like an odd choice of noun.
Well, it is actually one of the most brilliant philosophical and theological bridges ever constructed in literature.
How so?
Because in the ancient world, the term logos carried immense weight in both Greek philosophy and Jewish thought.
Okay.
So for the Greeks, the logos was the rational principle that governed the universe. It was the hidden logical order behind all the chaos of nature.
Right, like the physics of the universe.
Exactly. But for the Jewish mind, the Word of God was God's active power. It was literally how he spoke the world into existence back in Genesis.
Let there be light, and there was light.
Yes. So when John uses logos, he is bringing those two massive cultural worlds together. The logos is God's ultimate communication. It's his self-expression.
Okay, I think I'm tracking.
So if God the Father is the invisible, infinite reality, the logos is the exact representation of his being projected outward into a form that can actually interact with creation.
Right. Think of it like a master architect.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Let's say this architect is designing a massive, incredibly complex, futuristic city.
Sure.
Before a single physical brick is ever laid, before the first concrete truck even arrives on site, that city exists perfectly in its entirety within the architect's mind.
Yes.
The blueprints contain the reality of the city before the city has actual physical dimensions. So Jesus, as the Logos, is the architect. He is the mind that designed the universe.
That is a very, very helpful way to visualize it. He is the blueprint. Every natural law, every physical constant, every biological pattern is stamped with the signature of the Logos.
Wow.
But, it goes even further than just the initial design.
It does.
Yeah. Remember Colossians 1:17, which says, "By him all things consist," or in some translations, hold together.
Right.
He isn't just the architect who drew the plans and then walked away to start another project. He is the sustaining force. He is literally the atomic glue holding the structure of reality together in this very millisecond.
That demands a massive expansion of how we view this figure.
Immense.
I mean, we tend to localize Jesus as a first-century teacher wandering around the Levant saying profound things about loving your neighbor, right?
Exactly.
But this paints him as the actual source code of reality. And bringing this into our modern context, like sitting here right now in the year 2026, this feels incredibly relevant.
Oh, more than ever.
Because we live in a world that feels completely chaotic. It's fast-paced, highly polarized, and our digital feeds are just a constant, exhausting barrage of shifting narratives.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
We are all desperate for solid ground. If we view Jesus merely as a fleeting historical philosopher, well, that doesn't offer much of an anchor when the world is shaking.
It doesn't. A historical philosopher offers advice, But the Logos offers an ontological anchor.
Wait, ontological. Unpack that word for me.
Right, sorry. So ontology is the study of being. It's the study of existence itself.
Okay.
When we say he is an ontological anchor, we mean your security isn't based on a human philosophy or a political system that is subject to, well, the erosion of time and cultural shifts.
Which they all are.
Exactly. Your security is rooted in the very nature of existence itself. If the one who holds the atomic structure of the universe together is also the one who is intimately involved in your personal redemption.
That completely changes everything.
It really does. It completely changes the psychology of how you face tomorrow morning's news cycle.
Okay, so we have this dimensionless, pre-existent, eternal creator, the architect.
Right.
But obviously the story of the Bible doesn't stay in the abstract cosmos. It comes down to earth.
Yes, it gets very grounded.
So how does a being who exists completely outside of our physical dimensions actually interact with humanity?
He steps into the physical dust.
I love that phrasing.
And this brings us to a really fascinating theological concept known as a Christophany.
Christophany, okay, so literally an appearance of Christ.
Precisely. A Christophany is a pre-incarnate appearance of the Son of God in human or, anthropomorphic form.
Right.
It is a moment where the invisible God makes himself visible, tangible, and localized to human beings long before the physical incarnation in Mary's womb in the New Testament.
Okay, so in the Old Testament, there is this specific recurring figure that our documents highlight over and over again called the angel of the Lord.
Yes, a very important figure.
Now, let's clarify this right away, because when I hear the word angel, I immediately picture, like, a created being with white wings, maybe playing a harp on a cloud.
Right, the classic Renaissance painting.
Exactly, like Gabriel or Michael. But this is fundamentally different from a regular angel.
Completely different. In the original Hebrew, the phrase is malach, Y-H-W-H. And the word malach simply means messenger or one who is sent.
Just a messenger.
Exactly. What makes this specific messenger entirely unique from Gabriel or Michael is his behavior and how the text treats him.
What does he do?
Well, this figure consistently speaks as God. He accepts worship, which created angels strictly forbid, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. If you look at the book of Revelation, whenever John tries to worship an angel, the angel panics and basically says, "Don't do that. I am a fellow servant. Worship God."
Okay, that makes sense.
But the angel of the Lord accepts it. Furthermore, he performs acts that only God can perform, like forgiving sins and making divine covenants.
So he is explicitly identified with God himself, but he's also somehow distinct from God.
Yeah.
Because, he is being sent by God.
Exactly. He is distinguished from God the Father in a way that perfectly aligns with the Trinitarian understanding of the Godhead.
Okay.
He is the sender and the sent. He is God appearing as the messenger of God.
Let's look at some of these specific encounters, because when you actually read the stories with this lens, they are totally wild.
They really are.
Take Hagar in Genesis 16. Just to give the listener some context, Hagar is an Egyptian servant. She has been horribly mistreated. She is pregnant, and she basically runs away into the brutal wilderness.
Yes, she's fleeing for her life.
She is desperate, alone, and likely thinks she's going to die out there. And the text says the angel of the Lord finds her by a spring of water.
And pay attention to what he says to her.
Right. He doesn't say to her, "Hey, I have a message from God. God will multiply your offspring."
Yeah.
He says, "I will surely multiply your offspring."
First person.
First person divine authority.
And look at Hagar's response. She doesn't thank a messenger. Genesis 16:13 says she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. "You are a God of seeing."
A God of seeing.
Yes. She recognizes in the absolute depths of her trauma and isolation that she has just had a face-to-face encounter with the divine.
That is so powerful. And we see that same blurring of the lines with Moses at the burning bush in Exodus 3, don't we?
We do. The text explicitly states that the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush.
Okay.
But then, just a few verses later, as Moses approaches to look at it, the text shifts and says, God called to him out of the bush and says, "I am the God of your father."
Wow.
So it is the angel of the Lord physically manifesting in the fire, but it is Yahweh speaking.
There's another one that always stands out to me. Manoah, the father of Samson in Judges 13.
Oh, that's a fascinating one.
Right. So Manoah and his wife meet the angel of the Lord. They don't quite realize who he is at first, so Manoah asks for his name.
Normal question.
Yeah. And the response is so cryptic. He says, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it's wonderful?"
Wonderful.
And then he literally ascends into the sky in the flame of their altar sacrifice. And Manoah is terrified and says to his wife, "We shall surely die, for we have seen God."
It is a consistent pattern of human terror and awe when the veil is finally pulled back.
Absolutely.
Genesis 18 is another really profound example of this anthropomorphic appearance.
What happens there?
So the Lord appears to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre. Abraham looks up and sees 3 men standing in front of him.
3 men, okay.
Now, as the narrative unfolds, 2 of these men go down to Sodom. They're created angels. But the 3rd man stays behind and is explicitly identified throughout the rest of the chapter as Yahweh.
Wait, a man is identified as Yahweh?
Yes, and this pre-incarnate Christ eats a physical meal with Abraham. He engages in a back-and-forth conversation with him, and he actually allows Abraham to negotiate with him over the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That is an intensely intimate interaction, eating a meal under a tree with God. But I think the most visceral, physical example of this has to be Jacob in Genesis 32.
Oh, without a doubt.
So Jacob is alone in the desert at night. He is absolutely terrified because he has to meet his brother Esau the next day. And Esau has an army and a long-standing, very justified grudge.
Jacob essentially stole his birthright and blessing.
Right. Jacob is expecting to be slaughtered, and the text says a man wrestles with him until the breaking of the day.
A man.
Yeah, they are literally in the dirt, sweating, grappling in the dark all night long. And during this wrestling match, the man permanently injures Jacob's hip and then changes Jacob's name to Israel, which means he struggled with God.
Which is very telling.
And then Jacob names the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been preserved."
This specific encounter raises a monumental theological and, frankly, psychological question.
What is that?
If God is omnipresent, right? If he is a supreme spirit who spoke the cosmos into existence as the Logos, why would he limit himself to a localized physical form to grapple in the mud with a deceitful shepherd in the ancient Near East?
Right. I mean, if you are the architect holding atomic structures together, why are you getting sweaty in the dirt?
Exactly.
It feels almost beneath the dignity of a cosmic deity.
It does.
But I actually think it reveals something incredibly deep about human psychology.
Go on.
We are physical creatures. We process reality through our senses, through friction, through resistance. If Jacob just had a quiet, disembodied voice speak to him during a meditation in the desert, I don't think it would have transformed him.
You don't think so?
No. He was a stubborn, self-reliant guy. He was a trickster. He needed physical struggle. He needed to push against something tangible to finally realize his own weakness and God's absolute sovereignty.
That is a crucial insight into how God interacts with human nature. These Christophanies demonstrate God's absolute determination for personal, tangible relationships.
He's not staying far away.
No. He refuses to remain a distant, sanitized deity on a far-off throne. Jesus didn't wait for the incarnation in the New Testament to show his face to humanity.
He was already there.
He was actively engaging with them, meeting them exactly at their point of greatest struggle. Jacob wrestling the angel is the perfect metaphor for the divine-human encounter.
It really is.
He meets us in our dirt, in our fear, and he allows us to wrestle with divine truth until we are injured by our own pride and ultimately transformed by his grace.
And it serves as a kind of historical rehearsal, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Think about it. When God eventually became permanently human in the New Testament, when Jesus was born, grew up, and started walking around Galilee, the Jewish people already had a theological framework for this.
Oh, I see.
They already knew from their own history that God could be fully divine while becoming fully, tangibly present in human form.
That's a great point.
The incarnation wasn't some wild new contradiction. It was the ultimate permanent fulfillment of a pattern he'd been establishing for millennia.
Exactly. It completely validated their historical experiences. When the patriarchs encountered the angel of the Lord and fell on their faces in worship, they weren't committing idolatry. They were responding accurately to God's self-manifestation.
So we've looked at these incredibly intimate one-on-one meetings in the desert.
Right.
But these pre-incarnate appearances aren't limited to quiet conversations or midnight wrestling matches, are they?
Not at all.
He also actively enters the most extreme historical conflicts and trials. He is both the companion and the warrior.
And this brings us to a really fascinating military encounter in Joshua chapter 5.
Set the stage for us.
So Joshua has just taken over leadership from Moses.
Huge shoes to fill.
Huge. And he is standing near the city of Jericho, about to lead the Israelites into a massive, terrifying, and seemingly impossible military campaign. The walls of Jericho are famously impenetrable.
Right.
Joshua looks up and he sees a man standing opposite him with a drawn sword in his hand.
I can just imagine the tension in that moment. Joshua's the commanding general. He's probably out doing reconnaissance. And suddenly there's a guy with a weapon drawn.
Yeah, a major threat.
So Joshua walks right up to him and asks the most logical military question. Are you for us or for our adversaries? Basically, whose side are you on?
And the response is one of the most revealing statements in the Old Testament. The figure says, "No, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come."
No.
Ah!
I love that. He doesn't even answer the binary question.
Exactly. Joshua asks, "Are you for us or them?" And the commander essentially says, "Your question is entirely too small."
Right.
He doesn't take sides in human conflicts. He takes over. He is there to establish God's ultimate sovereignty. And notice what happens next.
What does Joshua do?
Joshua immediately falls on his face to the earth and worships. And the commander says the exact same phrase that God spoke to Moses at the burning bush. "Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy."
It completely shifts Joshua's perspective.
Completely.
I mean, Joshua woke up that morning thinking he was the commander-in-chief of the operation. But in an instant, he realizes he is actually just a subordinate in a much larger cosmic campaign.
Yes.
The war isn't just about the physical walls of Jericho. It's a spiritual manifestation of God's will on earth.
It is the pre-incarnate Christ in a military guise. He's the strategic lead of the war in the unseen realm, manifesting on earth to ensure the divine protocol is executed.
That is amazing. And then we have what might be the most famous of these appearances, the fourth man in the fire in Daniel chapter 3.
Oh, definitely.
Set the historical stage for us here because the stakes are incredibly high in this story.
Okay, so we are in Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the most powerful monarch in the world at the time, has built this massive golden image and demanded that everyone bow down and worship it.
Right, a huge test of loyalty.
But 3 young Jewish exiles, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse, citing their absolute allegiance to Yahweh.
Which is basically a death sentence.
Yes. Nebuchadnezzar is thrown into a narcissistic rage. He orders the execution furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than normal. It is so hot that the flames actually kill the Babylonian soldiers who are trying to throw the 3 men into the fire.
So the men fall into this blazing inferno, bound in ropes. It should be over in 3 seconds. They should be instantly incinerated.
But they aren't. Nebuchadnezzar is watching from a safe distance, and suddenly he leaps up in astonishment. He asks his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?"
Right.
They say, "True, O king." And Nebuchadnezzar says, "But I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods."
Wow.
Or, as many deep theological translations render the Aramaic, like the Son of God.
It is the ultimate picture of divine solidarity.
It really is.
I like to picture it like a massive corporation going through a catastrophic crisis.
Yeah.
The building is literally on fire. A standard CEO might send a memo of support from a penthouse office in another state saying, "My thoughts are with you. Keep up the good work."
Right. Very detached.
Exactly. But the 4th man in the fire is like the CEO who takes the private elevator down, walks right past the fire marshals, steps onto the burning factory floor, and stands shoulder to shoulder with the line workers while the flames are raging all around them.
That's a great analogy.
He doesn't put the fire out from afar. He enters the furnace with them.
What a profound reality for the human experience.
Yeah.
The theological weight here is that the Son of God enters the furnace of human trials long before he ever enters the womb of Mary.
That is so comforting.
Right. For a modern listener facing severe adversity, the emotional application is immense. It tells us that Christ is present in our trials.
He's not just waiting at the end.
Exactly. He is not merely standing at the finish line waiting for us with a towel and a participation trophy, hoping we make it through. He's in the flames. Knowing him as the commander who stands with a drawn sword and the 4th man who walks in the fire provides an incredible psychological resilience in the unseen spiritual battles we face every single day.
Okay, so we have the architect designing the cosmos. We have the angel of the Lord wrestling in the dirt. We have the commander and the 4th man.
Yes.
But beyond these direct physical appearances, the texts reveal that God also encoded the Old Testament with something called types.
Typology, yes.
Right. These are symbols, images, and historical events meant to prepare human psychology for the Messiah's arrival. It's like a visual language.
Typology is one of the most fascinating and rigorous studies of biblical literature.
How would you define a type?
A type is a divinely appointed historical reality. It can be a person, an object, an institution, or an event that prefigures a corresponding greater reality in the future, which is called the antitype.
Okay, type and antitype.
Right. God was using the lived, visceral experience of the nation of Israel as a canvas to paint a highly detailed portrait of Christ centuries before he actually arrived.
Let's start with this idea of provision and healing in the wilderness.
Okay.
In Exodus 17, the Israelites have recently escaped Egypt, and they are in the desert. They are completely out of water, and people are starting to panic.
As anyone would.
Right. They are turning on Moses, ready to stone him. God tells Moses to take his staff, the same staff he used to bring judgment on Egypt, by the way, and strike a specific rock.
Yes.
Moses hits the rock, and water gushes out to save the people. Now, as a kid in Sunday school, you just think, wow, cool miracle.
Right, magical rock.
Exactly.
Right.
But what is the deeper typological meaning here?
Well, we don't have to guess at the meaning, because the Apostle Paul explicitly decodes it for us in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 4.
What does he say?
Speaking of the Israelites in the wilderness, Paul writes, "They drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ."
Wait, so Paul is taking a literal historical rock that got hit with a stick and saying that was Jesus.
He is revealing its typological substance, yes. Think about the mechanics of the event. The rock had to be smitten.
Struck.
Yes, it had to endure the physical blow of judgment from the lawgiver's staff. Only after it was struck did the life-giving water flow out to a dying, rebellious people.
Oh, wow.
It is a perfect physical picture of the crucifixion. Christ is the foundation, the stability, the ultimate source of living water. He was struck by the judgment of the law for our transgressions so that the Spirit, the living water, could flow to humanity.
And we can apply this to our own lives right now, can't we?
Absolutely.
Because the Israelites were at a place called Meribah, which, if I recall from the text, translates to something like testing or quarreling.
Yes, exactly.
So when we hit our own modern Meribah moments, like when the pressure at work is crushing, when a marriage is deeply strained, when we are emotionally running on empty and asking, is God really with me? We are supposed to look at the rock.
We have to.
We have to draw our daily sustenance from the one who was struck for us, not from our own fading energy.
That daily reliance, that deep need to be guided and fed, is also perfectly captured in another major Old Testament type, the shepherd.
Oh, the shepherd imagery is everywhere.
It is. You see this heavily in Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," and in Ezekiel 34, where God looks at the corrupt leaders of Israel and promises to shepherd his flock himself.
Right.
This compassionate, fiercely protective leader of the Old Testament is fully incarnated in the New Testament when Jesus stands up in John 10 and declares, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep."
I follow the logic on the rock and the shepherd. Those are very comforting, very accessible images.
They are.
But then we get to a type that is, frankly, really bizarre, distressing
I
even.
think I know which one you mean.
The bronze snake in Numbers 21.
Ah, yes.
The Nehushtan.
Right. So the Israelites are in the wilderness again, and they are in deep rebellion, complaining, rejecting God's provision.
Standard wilderness behavior. Exactly. And as a judgment, venomous snakes enter the camp, and people are being bitten and dying in sheer agony. Moses prays for the people, and God gives him a really strange instruction.
Very strange.
He tells Moses to forge a snake out of bronze, put it on a high pole, and anyone who looks at the bronze snake will survive the venom.
Yeah.
And they do, and they live. But what throws me is that Jesus explicitly applies this to himself in the Gospel of John, chapter 3.
Yes, he does.
He says, "As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up." I don't get the snake imagery. Why on earth would Jesus compare himself to a snake?
It is a deeply paradoxical image. We can call it a parable of the cross.
Okay, unpack that.
In biblical symbolism, stretching all the way back to the Garden of Eden, the serpent represents sin, the curse, and divine judgment.
Right, the snake in the grass.
Exactly. So why would God use the symbol of the curse as the actual instrument of salvation?
Yeah, well,
Because it prefigures the exact, stunning mechanics of the atonement. As Paul explains in 2 Corinthians 5, God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us.
Oh, I see.
The cure was made in the exact likeness of the curse. Jesus, on the cross, absorbed the poison of human sin.
Think about how wild that is psychologically for an Israelite in that camp.
It's terrifying.
You are lying in the dirt, Venom is coursing through your veins, your nervous system is shutting down, you are dying from a snake bite, and Moses yells out, "Look up at this giant bronze snake." You are being healed by staring at a representation of the very thing that is killing you.
It's totally counterintuitive.
It is. Jesus became the sin. He became the curse on the pole so that those who look to him in faith might be healed from the toxic sting of death. It requires total surrender to look at the instrument of your own death and trust it for life.
It is a brilliant, shocking subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
And as we move through the Old Testament timeline, these typological symbols don't just stay in the realm of physical survival in the wilderness.
Where do they go?
They evolve to address the ultimate cosmic problems of humanity: sin, divine justice, and eternal mediation. This is where we begin to see the anatomy of kingship and cosmic atonement.
And the most famous, undeniable example of this has to be the Passover Lamb from Exodus 12.
Oh, without question.
Let's paint the picture for the listener. The Israelites are enslaved in Egypt. After 9 plagues, Pharaoh still won't let them go.
He is stubborn.
Very. The final devastating plague is coming. The destroyer is going to sweep through Egypt and take the firstborn of every household.
Yes.
But God gives the Israelites a way out. He tells them to take an unblemished, perfect male lamb, sacrifice it, and paint its blood on the wooden doorposts of their houses.
The doorposts and the lintel.
Right. And when the judgment comes, it will see the blood and pass over that house.
The typological mapping between Exodus 12 and the New Testament is exact and profound.
It really is.
The innocent dies for the guilty. The blood serves as a visible seal, protecting the inhabitants from righteous judgment. Fast forward to the New Testament, and the very first time John the Baptist sees Jesus walking toward him, what does he say?
He says, "Behold, the Lamb of God."
Exactly. He doesn't say, "Behold the King," or "Behold the prophet." He says, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." Paul reinforces this in 1 Corinthians 5:7, declaring, "Christ, our Passover Lamb, has been sacrificed."
And the timing isn't a coincidence either, is it?
Not at all. Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem during the exact historical time frame of the Passover festival. He was physically bleeding on a wooden cross at the very hour the Passover lambs were being slaughtered in the temple courts.
The choreography of history is just staggering.
It truly is.
We also see these patterns in historical figures. I want to ask about Melchizedek from Genesis 14.
Oh, a very mysterious figure.
He's incredibly mysterious. He just shows up out of nowhere. Abraham has just won a battle, and he meets Melchizedek. The text says he is the king of Salem, which translates to king of peace, and he is a priest of God Most High.
Right.
He brings out bread and wine, blesses Abraham, and Abraham gives him 1/10 of all his spoils, and then he just vanishes from the narrative. Who is this guy, and why is he important?
Melchizedek is crucial because he establishes an eternal, superior pattern of priesthood.
Superior to what?
To the Levitical priesthood. Under the Old Covenant law, which came centuries later with Moses, the roles of king and priest were strictly, permanently separated.
Right, you couldn't be both.
Exactly. Kings had to come from the tribe of Judah. Priests had to come from the tribe of Levi. You cannot hold both offices. Kings who try to act like priests were severely punished by God. But Melchizedek predates the Levitical law. He operates completely outside of it.
So he is both a king and a priest simultaneously.
Yes. And as the author of the book of Hebrews points out in chapter 7, Melchizedek has no recorded genealogy in the Genesis text, no mention of his birth or his death.
It just appears and disappears.
Right, so in the literary structure of the Bible, he appears eternal. He serves as the ultimate prototype of Christ, who comes not from the priestly tribe of Levi, but from Judah. Jesus merges the two distinct offices into one eternal king-priest role, in the order of Melchizedek.
We even see Christ's life patterned in the emotional and historical arc of Joseph, back in Genesis 37-50.
Joseph is a beautiful type.
He really is. Joseph is the beloved son of his father. He is deeply rejected by his brothers, sold into slavery for pieces of silver, thrown into a pit, falsely accused, suffers unjustly in a dungeon.
The parallels are incredible.
But he is ultimately exalted to the right hand of the throne of Egypt to save the very people who betrayed him. The thematic echoes of Christ's rejection by his own people, his suffering, and his ultimate glorification to save the world are deafening once you know what you're looking for.
They are. But if we want to look at the absolute most profound typological mechanism in the Old Testament, the true pinnacle of the anatomy of redemption, we have to examine the mercy seat.
Okay, the mercy seat.
The Hebrew word is kapare, which was later translated in the Greek Septuagint as hilasterion. It was a solid slab of pure gold placed on top of the Ark of the Covenant, overshadowed by two golden cherubim with their wings spread.
I really need you to break down the mechanics of this.
Sure.
Because when I hear mercy seat, I just picture a fancy piece of decorative furniture in a tent. What was actually happening here?
It was far from decorative. It was the geographic, theological center of God's presence on earth.
Wow.
It was located in the Holy of Holies, the innermost pitch-black room of the tabernacle, which only the high priest could enter once a year. To understand the mercy seat, you have to understand what was underneath it.
What was inside the ark?
Inside the wooden ark were the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments.
Wow.
Yes, the absolute, unbending moral law of God, which demanded perfection. A perfection that humanity continually violently broke.
Right.
Also inside were a pot of manna, representing Israel's rejection of God's provision, and Aaron's budding rod, representing their rebellion against God's chosen leadership. So the ark itself was essentially a container of evidence against humanity. It was the condemnation of the human race boxed up in acacia wood.
Wow. An evidence locker of human failure.
Precisely. The law inside the ark is constantly crying out for justice and judgment against the rebels. But on top of that evidence locker sat the solid gold lid, the mercy seat.
The caparite.
Right. And once a year, on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies trembling, carrying the blood of a sacrificed innocent animal. He would sprinkle that blood directly onto the golden mercy seat. God had promised Moses, "There I will meet with you."
So God looks down from between the cherubim.
Yes.
He sees his broken law demanding justice. But between his holy, consuming gaze and the broken law is the blood of the innocent substitute.
You have grasped the exact mechanism. The blood absorbs the wrath of the law. It is the sanitized place where perfect, unyielding justice meets perfect, overwhelming mercy.
It gives me chills.
It is the mechanism of propitiation, the appeasing of righteous wrath through a substitute. And the New Testament makes the breathtaking connection. In Romans 3:25, Paul writes that God put forward Jesus as a propitiation by his blood.
Okay.
And the Greek word Paul uses for propitiation there, it is hilasterion, the exact word for the mercy seat.
That is staggering. I want to make sure the sheer scale of this is clear to you listening.
Please do.
Under the Old Covenant, you had to have a physical golden seat. You needed a physical temple, a highly specialized, ritually pure priest, and the yearly repetitive slaughter of animals just to temporarily cover the sins of one single nation for 12 months.
Exactly.
But Paul is saying that Christ physically becomes the location of mercy. His own beaten body on the Roman cross becomes the mercy seat. He sheds his own blood once for all time, for all people across all of history. The cross, an instrument of absolute torture, becomes God's throne in the midst of human shame.
That is the theological crescendo of the entire sacrificial system. The shadow finally becomes substance. The blood of bulls and goats could only ever temporarily push sin forward. The blood of the eternal, pre-existent Son actually removes it, satisfying the cosmic demands of justice while overflowing with infinite mercy.
And that leads us to the pivotal moment. All of these symbols, the smitten rock, the bronze snake on the pole, the Passover Lamb, the golden mercy seat, and all of these pre-incarnate appearances, the wrestling angel, the commander with the sword, the fourth man in the fire, they all converge.
They do.
They all funnel down into a single historical moment of incarnation, a baby born in Bethlehem.
And when Jesus grows up and steps onto the historical stage in the New Testament, he does not shy away from claiming the absolute fullness of this Old Testament heritage.
He owns it completely.
He does. We see this most dramatically and, well, most dangerously in his use of the divine name.
Right. Back in Exodus 3 at the burning bush, God reveals his personal name to Moses as, "I am that I am."
Yes.
It is the ultimate statement of self-existence. I don't depend on anything. I just exist.
Exactly. And fast forward to John chapter 8. Jesus is in a heated theological debate with the religious leaders of his day. They are questioning his age and his authority.
Typical argument.
Right. And Jesus drops a theological nuclear bomb. He says to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am."
Oh, man.
Notice the grammar. He doesn't say, "Before Abraham was, I was." He shatters time. He claims the eternal present tense of the divine name entirely for himself.
And the religious leaders weren't confused by what he meant, were they?
Not at all.
Because they immediately picked up stones to execute him for blasphemy. He was claiming to be the voice from the burning bush.
No.
But my absolute favorite I am moment happens in the Garden of Gethsemane in John 18.
Oh, that is a powerful scene.
It's the night of his betrayal. Judas brings a cohort of Roman soldiers and temple guards into the dark garden to arrest him. They are armed with swords and torches. Jesus steps forward and asks who they're looking for.
And they say, Jesus of Nazareth.
Right, and Jesus simply replies, I am he. How does the original language frame that?
So in the Greek text, the word he is added by translators just to make it flow in English. What Jesus literally says in the Greek is ego eimi, I am.
Just I am.
Yes. And the text records that the exact moment he spoke that phrase, the soldiers drew back and literally fell to the ground.
Just the sheer unfiltered force of the divine name, spoken by the incarnate word, physically knocks a platoon of battle-hardened Roman soldiers backward into the dirt.
It's incredible.
It is like a flash of the commander of the Lord's army shining through the frail veil of his human exhaustion.
It is a stunning display of restrained omnipotence.
Yeah.
And we also see this convergence of the eternal and the physical and the prophecies of Isaiah.
Oh, Isaiah 9.
Yes. Isaiah 9, verses 6 and 7 is a passage we hear endlessly on greeting cards and in carols every Christmas, but we rarely stop to analyze the massive theological weight it carries.
What does it say again?
For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
How do you reconcile those titles with a baby? It seems contradictory.
That is the profound paradox of the incarnation captured in a single breath. You are taking the most exalted, cosmic, divine titles possible. Mighty God, Everlasting Father, the creator of time and space itself, and you are applying them directly to a vulnerable, dependent, crying human infant.
Wow.
It permanently bridges the historical man of Nazareth with the eternal object of faith. It explicitly shows that the child shivering in the manger is the exact same ontological being as the architect of the cosmos.
And bringing this into our modern daily reality, as a social and cultural application for us today, believers are called to emulate this Prince of Peace.
Yes, exactly.
Look at the year 2026. We are living in an era of intense political polarization, nationalistic fervor, and endless, exhausting culture wars. People are drawing lines in the sand everywhere.
Everywhere you look.
But if you recognize that this cosmic, eternal architect became a vulnerable child to establish a kingdom of peace, your ultimate allegiance has to shift.
Has to.
You have to give your highest loyalty to the King of Kings above any national flag, cultural tribe, or political party. You are called to live as a peacemaker, reflecting his nature into a deeply fractured world.
That is the necessary, practical outworking of this theology. If you truly believe the King has come, you're required to live according to the ethics of his kingdom, not the ethics of your current political climate.
Okay, so we've tracked him from eternity past through the Old Testament types and the Christophanies in the dirt, all the way to the incarnation, the cross, and the resurrection.
We've covered a lot of history.
We have. But the story obviously doesn't end on a Sunday morning 2,000 years ago. The resurrection wasn't the end of his work. It was a transition into a new, ongoing, multidimensional phase of ministry. He is currently active.
Extremely active. Jesus did not ascend to heaven simply to sit back, put his feet up, and passively wait for the end of the world.
He's not retired.
No, not at all. The New Testament, particularly the complex theology found in the book of Hebrews and the book of Revelation, presents a Christ who is intensely active across multiple simultaneous roles.
Let's break these roles down because they seem to contradict each other at first glance. First, he is operating as both the priest and the sacrificial lamb.
Yes, both at once.
Hebrews chapters 4 through 10 go into immense detail about Jesus being our great high priest who has passed through the heavens. But then in Revelation 5, the Apostle John is given a vision of the throne room of God.
Right.
He is told to look for the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But when he looks, he doesn't see a lion. He sees a lamb standing as though it had been slain.
This is a unique, breathtaking mystery of the Christian faith. In every other religious, pagan, or Jewish sacrificial system in human history, there is a strict, impenetrable division between the priest who offers the sacrifice and the victim that is offered.
Right. There are two different entities.
The priest holds the knife, the animal bleeds, but Jesus is both. He is the one who offers, and he's the offering itself. He steps into the heavenly tabernacle presenting his own blood to redeem people from every tribe and nation.
I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and the best I could come up with is a courtroom scenario.
Great, let's hear it.
Imagine you are in a courtroom, you are guilty, you have racked up a massive multi-million-dollar fine that you could never pay in 1,000 lifetimes, and the judge is about to drop the gavel and sentence you to maximum security prison for life.
A hopeless situation.
Totally hopeless. But right before the gavel falls, the judge stands up, takes off his robes, steps down from the bench, pulls out his own checkbook, and pays your entire fine out of his own pocket.
A staggering act of grace in itself, satisfying the demands of the law.
But it doesn't stop there. Because instead of just paying the fine and going back home to his mansion, that same judge turns around, puts his arm around your shoulder, and becomes your permanent, lifelong pro bono defense attorney.
That's beautiful.
He pays the ultimate price to clear your record, and then he stands beside you every single day to advocate for you against any future accusations. That is the mechanism of him being both the Lamb who was slain to pay the debt and the high priest who ever lives to make intercession for us.
That captures the dual dynamic perfectly. And Hebrews 4 adds another deeply emotional layer to this priestly role. It says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin."
Sympathize with our weaknesses.
Yes, because he actually lived as the ultimate man, the last Adam, as Paul refers to him in 1 Corinthians 15 and Romans 5. He understands the immense psychological pressure of the human experience.
He knows what it feels like to have a nervous system.
Exactly.
He knows grief. He knows the sting of betrayal by close friends. He knows physical agony. He knows the exhaustion of temptation.
He lived it. His intercession in heaven is not clinical or detached. It is deeply empathetic. He's an empathetic servant who, as we see in the Gospels, still girds himself with a towel to wash the feet and the consciences of his followers.
But he's also king.
Yes, paradoxically, he is simultaneously reigning as king. Revelation 19 pictures him returning as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, seated with all cosmic authority, bringing ultimate final victory over evil.
All these roles at once.
And beneath all of these titles, priest, lamb, servant, king, man, is a foundational reality stated in Colossians 2:9. For in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. He is God.
So he is holding the atomic structure of the universe together, wearing the crown of a king, but still operating with the tender empathy of a shepherd.
It's all harmonized.
Which leads us into our final section, and honestly, the part that feels most urgent for daily life. If Jesus is actively reigning as priest and king right now, how is he operating in the invisible, daily, spiritual battles of our modern lives? How does this ancient theology intersect with, say, a Tuesday morning commute?
Well, the Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians 6 that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places.
So there's an unseen war.
There is a behind-the-scenes unseen war occurring constantly. And Revelation 12 highlights this as a conflict over what we might term atmospheric ownership.
Atmospheric ownership. That is a fascinating phrase. We're talking about the mental and spiritual air we breathe.
Yes, the atmosphere around us.
The texts mention that the enemy tries to fill the air with a stench. We're talking about accusation, fear, paranoia, anxiety. And in our modern context, in 2026, I immediately equate that stench to digital noise.
Oh, it's a very accurate parallel.
We are constantly breathing in an atmosphere of algorithmic outrage, doom scrolling, comparison, and a constant low-grade panic about the future. That is the modern stench the enemy uses to suffocate our peace and paralyze us.
It is a highly effective, paralyzing tactic. If the enemy can control the atmosphere of your mind, he can neutralize your effectiveness and your joy. But the ascended Jesus operates as the one who cleanses the air.
How does he do that?
In Revelation 5:8, John sees golden bowls full of incense, which represent the prayers of the saints, mingled with the merits of Christ, the word of the ascended Christ, his truth. His finished work acts as a sanitizing incense.
Okay, but how does a person actually do that? How do I, as a stressed out human in the 21st century, actually access that sanitized air? What is the practical mechanism for replacing the stench of doom scrolling with divine incense?
It requires a deliberate shift in focus and reliance, and the Old Testament gives us an incredible metaphor for how this often happens. It's called the 400-cubit breach.
The 400-cubit breach, where is that from?
It is from 2 Kings chapter 14. There is a historical account where King Jehoash of Israel defeats King Amaziah of Judah. And as part of his victory, Jehoash breaks down the fortified wall of Jerusalem for exactly 400 cubits.
Okay.
Now, the wall of Jerusalem was the city's ultimate pride. It was their primary source of physical defense and psychological self-reliance. When that massive section of the wall was shattered, it left the inhabitants completely exposed and vulnerable to the outside world.
Oh, I see where this is going. The spiritual application here is devastatingly relatable.
Very relatable.
Sometimes Jesus allows the high walls of our own self-reliance to be breached. We spend our lives building these massive psychological and practical walls, right?
We do.
We build up our careers, we pad our bank accounts, we curate a flawless reputation online, we rely on our intellect or our physical health, and we sit behind them thinking, I'm safe, I've got this handled.
Untouchable.
Right. But then a crisis hits. A sudden health diagnosis, a financial collapse, a deep relational betrayal, or just a crippling bout of anxiety. The wall is violently breached, there is a 400-cubit hole in our defenses, and the enemy is pouring in.
And in that terrifying moment of absolute vulnerability, when the stench of fear is rushing in through the breach, we are forced to realize that our self-made walls could never truly protect us from the deepest existential threats.
Never.
So why does Jesus allow the breach? He allows it so that we have no choice but to stop trusting the crumbling wall and run entirely to him. He steps into the breach. He becomes our true place of defense, the commander standing in the gap with a drawn sword.
That is a hard, painful lesson, but it completely reframes how we view adversity.
It really does.
The instruction for believers today is profound. First, stop fighting flesh and blood. Stop thinking your political opponent, your frustrating boss, or your spouse is the ultimate enemy.
Look at the unseen.
Recognize the unseen spiritual reality behind your daily anxieties. When the digital noise gets too loud, when the breach opens up in your life and you feel totally exposed, you don't frantically try to build a new wall out of your own effort.
You can't rebuild it.
You rely on the commander who wrestles in the dirt, the fourth man who stands in the fire, the empathetic priest who understands your psychological pressure. You focus on his finished work, and that truth becomes the incense that cleanses the air of your mind.
It is a call to total, unyielding reliance on the harmonized, multi-perspective Christ.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started before time itself, looking at the eternal architect designing the blueprints of reality. We watched the commander step into human history, walking into blazing furnaces and wrestling patriarchs in the dust to prove his desire for relationship.
A perfect summary.
We decoded the ultimate provision and justice hidden in the visual language of smitten rocks, bronze snakes, and the blood-stained gold of the mercy seat. And we've seen how the modern-day priest and king steps into our digital noise and our breached walls to be our daily active advocate.
The tapestry is complete. When you step back and look at it from Genesis to Revelation, it is not a disconnected series of events. It is a single, unified, breathtaking portrait of the Son of God.
As we wrap up this incredible journey, I want to hand it over to you to leave the listener with a final thought. We live in a world of competing voices, a modern confusion of human babble. How should we process all of this as we go about our week?
I would leave the listener with this thought to ponder. Jesus is the Alpha and Omega. He is the single protocol meant to replace all the noise and confusion of our modern babble.
The single protocol.
Yes. And if this Jesus, the eternal architect of the cosmos, was actively crossing dimensional barriers, if he was willingly walking into fiery furnaces and grappling in the dirt with humans centuries before he even had a physical body, what unseen boundaries is he crossing in your life right now?
That's a great question.
What walls is he stepping through? What fires is he standing in alongside you in this exact moment that you haven't even recognized yet?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep reading, and keep looking for the hero hidden in every chapter. We'll see you next time.